Hello.
I'm Savannah.
And I'm Elysia.
And this is Burden of Proof.
Welcome back, everyone.
Welcome back, and I hope you had a Merry Christmas for those who celebrate. And
Happy
for those who
holidays.
don't. Yeah. I hope Santa came down your chimney. I hope you were broken into and opposite of burgled. The opposite, leaving things.
Yes. I hope that you just didn't have a Santa like the one in our case today.
Oh my goodness!
But before we jump into that, we have a couple of announcements.
We do. So, as we end the year and enter the new year, we have decided to take a little bit of a hiatus in January.
Yes. Life happens.
Yes.
So we will be hitting pause, but we will be re-releasing some of our greatest hits,
Yes.
if you will, throughout the month of January. And for our Patreon listeners, we will be hitting pause. So while we are not actively working, we will not, of course, be charging you for Patreon.
Patreon has a great little function that lets us do that. So you won't be charged. And as soon as we come back, we'll turn it back on and we'll be right back to where we were.
And should you be new here and you decide that you like us and you want to follow us on Patreon, you can still become a new member on Patreon, but you will not be charged until we come back.
Yes.
So that's always an option as well.
Yes. But yeah, you guys, it's just time for a break. We've put out an episode every week for 2 years and we are tired.
Yes. And it's been quite the season.
It really has. Yes.
So in the meantime, you can listen to our replays. You can head over to Buried Motives and listen to them. Gage and Ray from Gore Report will be, I'm not sure exactly when, but I think that at least Gage will be starting his solo project in January as well. So you can look forward to that.
Yeah.
And so that's our big announcement. The small announcement is, though, we will still be doing our live event on Patreon tomorrow evening.
Yes. Come join us. Come hang out.
Yeah.
It's my month.
Yes.
So we will be talking about something. It is 2 weeks away and I don't know yet when we are recording this.
I'm sure it'll be something Christmassy.
Yeah, it'll be good. We'll have a good time.
We'll still be in the spirit, I think.
Yeah. We'll be having a great time.
We'll be hungover from all the Christmas cookies, but
am I gonna
good.
get some Christmas cookies? I gotta figure out. I gotta come over here and hijack some cookies soon. Alicia's a great baker.
I'm sure that we'll have extra. I always overdo it.
I love anything you bake. It's all good.
Awesome. All right. I think that's all of our announcements.
Let's talk about Bad Santa.
Bad Santa. That's a good title for this.
Oh.
So, it's the holidays, a time for joy, but I'm not going to lie to y'all. Today's case is short, but definitely not sweet. In fact, it left quite a bitter taste in my mouth, so let this be your warning that if you are still in the joyful holiday bubble, you might want to come back and listen another day.
This will pop it.
Okay, so for everybody who's decided to stay.
It's the holiday season.
So our Christmas story today took place in Covina, California, a small town in the San Gabriel Valley about 20 miles outside of Los Angeles.
Oh my goodness.
Despite the palm trees and arid weather, it's a town that loves to celebrate the holiday. They have many of the traditional events, including a parade and a big Christmas tree lighting. So, I think it's easy enough for us being in Florida to imagine what that's like.
Yes.
You still got all the holiday vibes. It just looks a little different. But this sounds like kind of like Hallmark Townish.
I was getting the vibe.
Just not with the snow.
Yeah.
Very quiet over Christmas normally.
Okay.
Over the season normally. The Ortega family especially loved celebrating Christmas in Covina. It was Joseph and Alice Ortega's favorite time of the year because it would bring their entire large family together. Joseph, also known as Papa Joe, was particularly proud of their family as he was the first U.S.-born son to Mexican immigrant parents, and he felt like he had truly achieved the American dream.
Papa Joe pulling at my heartstrings early in the episode.
He and Alice had a large family, and he had retired after a successful career as an owner of an industrial paint business. Okay.
Interesting career choice.
Yes. On Christmas Eve of 2008, they hosted their entire family and some friends and neighbors, as they always did. The party included Joe and Alice's 5 adult children, James, Charles, Letitia, Elysia, and Sylvia.
Okay. Got it.
They were there with all of their spouses and or their kids.
A big group.
It's a very large group. On top of that, as I said, they had some friends and some neighbors. And they had extended family as well, in from Mexico. Altogether, initially, the party was like 40 to 50 people.
Okay.
But as the party wound down, several people have left, okay? Especially friends and neighbors have kind of wandered away, if you will. Things kind of start quieting down, and the Ortegas, the immediate adults in the family, okay, they all do an annual poker game every Christmas Eve. Once the party winds down, that's what they do. So they're at the dining table starting their poker game. Meanwhile, 17-year-old Michael, who is one of the grandchildren, he went upstairs to use a computer. And the other adults, like the extended family, some of the in-laws, etc., were kind of watching over most of the children towards the back of the house, who were playing video games or hanging out in the backyard by the pool. Well, close to midnight, the normally quiet time for emergency services was inundated with 911 calls reporting a frighteningly large fire coming from the Ortega's residence.
Oh my goodness.
Multiple fire teams arrived to find the home absolutely engulfed in flames. Neighbors stood outside their homes praying that it didn't spread throughout the neighborhood. This was anything but a typical house fire, and with the number of people both present and missing, it was complete chaos.
I was going to say, how do you account for everybody?
As detectives arrived and questioned those who were present, they learned that there had been about 25 people in the home at the time of the fire, but they could only account for 16 of them.
Oh my gosh.
A few of the family members are not on site, though. A neighbor explained to detectives that it was Letitia and possibly her husband and their daughter who ran over to her yard and screamed for them to call 911. But their call to 911 wasn't about the fire. Their call to 911 was because Letitia's 8-year-old daughter, Katrina, had been shot.
Oh my god. Oh, okay. Hold on. The plot thickens. More than one issue to deal with here.
Yeah. When they talked to those family members who were on the scene, a Christmas Eve nightmare unfolded. The family explained to detectives that a man dressed in a Santa suit entered the house and began shooting at everyone he saw.
Bad Santa! No!
Yes.
Bad Santa. No cookies for you.
That seemed to be about the only thing that everybody agreed upon, though,
right.
Or remembered that was the same. Unfortunately, detectives got sort of conflicting accounts on possibly how the fire started, and definitely conflicting accounts on where the gun-wielding Santa was. Some said they saw him flee, while others said that they think he got stuck in the fire. Fortunately, one couple who had attended the party, I think they might have been next-door neighbors to the Ortegas, but they left early. They were able to give detectives a more detailed account about the Santa fleeing.
Oh.
Okay? They said that they saw a blue Dodge Caliber drive off in a rush and took notice not only because of his speed, But whoever this Santa was, he had left the headlights off.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah, because the house was at the end of a cul-de-sac.
Mhm.
So anytime anybody who lives on a quiet road or a cul-de-sac knows, like, if somebody's speeding down your road, you take notice.
Absolutely.
Because that's very unusual. So the detectives put out an APB on the blue Dodge Caliber. Meanwhile, a team of 80 firefighters fought the blaze that was absolutely decimating the Ortega's home and threatened the entire street.
That's an insane amount. I mean, that fire must have been insane.
It is. There is some news footage of it in my sources, and you can tell this is not your typical
your mama's
fire.
house fire.
Yeah, it is definitely not. Now, shortly after 3 a.m., there was another 911 call by a man named Brad Pardo, who lived outside of Covina, about 40 miles or so, in this suburb of Sylmar. He arrived home late from a Christmas party to find his brother, Bruce Pardo, sitting on his couch in the living room covered in blood. As detectives investigated how Bruce died, they found that he was shot just one time in the head at close range. So, one might think suicide, but there was a 9mm handgun sitting in Bruce's lap, and a second 9mm handgun was on the floor close by, suggesting there may have been a second shooter. They found damage on the wall nearby and a second bullet hole in the ceiling, which was possibly more evidence that someone managed to shoot Bruce at close range after an altercation. Back at the Ortegas, the fire was finally put out, leaving nothing but basically a pile of charred rubble.
Yeah.
Like, most everything was burned except for concrete.
No, I understand, because in my neighborhood in the last 6 months, 2 houses have burned down completely.
Oh my God.
Like, down to the concrete, nothing left. One of them was just a freak accident, and the other one happened during a hurricane, and there's no emergency response teams because we're in hurricane evacuation zone A. So the minute there's anything wrong, they're like, you have to go because we can't get to you. And this person's house caught on fire. Their generator caught on fire. They had evacuated. There was literally nothing anybody could do. And just the storm, it just...
Thank God it didn't, like, spread to other people's homes.
Yes, because of the wind and we were worried about that, but no. But yeah, I mean, it was completely... It's gone. Wow. There's literally just the shell because the house is concrete block.
Yeah.
That's literally all that's left. And just like rubble.
Yeah.
It's so scary.
Yep. Well, at this point, the family confirmed that there was still 9 of them missing. So it was assumed they never made it out of the house. Those missing included Papa Joe.
Papa Joe!
Alice, his wife. Their 2 sons, James and Charles. 2 of their daughters.
I was going to say, we got to go back to Letitia's daughter.
Elysia and Sylvia, the other daughters, did not make it. And their 2 daughter-in-laws, I believe, of James and Charles' wives, and their grandson, Michael, who had been upstairs.
Oh my gosh.
The detectives had to enlist the help of what's called a SORT team, which is just what it sounds like, basically. It's a specialized task force comprised of multiple professionals that could sort through the rubble and find bodies, or in this case, pretty much remains. And the bodies were so charred that they had to use dental records to identify each of them.
Oh, that's horrible.
But at this point, then, they know the suspect is most likely still on the loose, right? And the other unusual death near their town, or in the next town over, was also a bit strange, so detectives had their work cut out for them. As a couple of the investigators sat down with Brad Pardo, the brother of the strange death, to discuss Bruce's death in Sylmar, Brad told them that Bruce had always been very outgoing and friendly to everyone, so he doesn't know of anyone that would want to harm him. He explained that Bruce worked in IT and had such a squeaky clean background that he had even worked on some government contracts with NASA.
Who is shooting the IT guy?
Right?
What are you going to do when your computer freezes up? When you can't control alt delete your way out of the situation? What are you going to do?
I don't know.
Okay, I need to know how they're connected. I'm dying here.
Despite his obvious success in his career, detectives learned that his personal life was not as successful. When he hit his 40s, Bruce had decided he finally wanted to settle down. Or so that's what they were told. A coworker had introduced him to Sylvia Ortiz, a recently divorced single mom of 3. Bruce and Sylvia hit it off, and after marrying in 2005, they and Sylvia's children moved to the small town of Montrose, which is also right near Covina. By all accounts, everything about the family seemed great, but in the early months of 2008, things changed. Bruce suffered a knee injury that required surgery, which drastically altered his lifestyle, causing him to both gain weight and suffer from depression. Sylvia had told others it was affecting the whole family, as Bruce became withdrawn and would spend every weekend held up at home doing basically nothing and not even taking care of his personal hygiene very much. Fed up with his behavior and refusal to get help, she and the kids moved out in March of 2008, and their divorce was finalized on December 17th. So, as detectives looked into Bruce's marriage and divorce, they learned that while Sylvia's last name was Ortiz when she met him, that was in fact her first husband's last name. Her maiden name was Ortega.
I was wondering. I was like,
yeah,
that's 2 Sylvias.
And she was one of the victims from the party in Covina. So, investigators were now tasked with figuring out for sure is this a coincidence or does his death connect to what happened?
Yeah, because there's not a clear motive, but there is a connection, so that's weird.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, because obviously he didn't.
He wasn't there.
He was the victim. He wasn't there. It wasn't like he did it out of,
Right. So to accomplish this, the 2 investigative teams began working together. The first thing they confirmed the 2 crimes had in common is that 8 out of 9 of the deceased victims in the fire were actually shot just one at a time at close range with a 9mm. Michael, the Ortega's grandson who was upstairs, died from the fire. What they still had yet to figure out, though, was why the shooter was dressed like Santa. If both crimes were committed by the same shooter, and whether he set the fire to the Ortega's home intentionally, or was it an accident? The neighbor who attended the Ortega's party told investigators that it wasn't unusual for someone dressed as Santa to show up at the Ortega's. She said they would have a Santa come every year to visit the kids and take photos, but that it used to be another neighbor of theirs that would play him. That neighbor's name was Pat, but when investigators tracked him down, he told them he had not played Santa for the Ortegas the last few years since he had moved away.
Okay.
Still, detectives were skeptical as the Santa gunman obviously knew this was a regular thing, and he would be let into the home. With no question.
Yeah.
Nevertheless, they had to move on. Or
Pat's like, I was just being a good Santa, good neighbor.
Yeah. So they move on with the investigation, and the next interview was the only surviving daughter of Papa Joe and Alice. Letitia. She was finally able to speak with detectives as her daughter was stable, and it was believed she would survive.
I don't like the way you said that. Oh, no.
You'll understand why I said that.
Well,
but I don't want to get ahead of myself.
Okay.
You will find out why that is. At the start of the interview, Letitia told detectives that despite the Santa costume, she thought she knew who the shooter was. She believed it was Sylvia's ex-husband, Bruce.
Oh, I didn't even think about the Ortiz.
Yeah, I said that. He met her when she was Ortiz, but she had been married once before.
No, I know, but I didn't even think about him as a possible suspect.
Ah, yes.
I just was like, oh, they're divorced.
So detectives were shocked, of course. Not only did the crime scene at Brad Pardo's house not make sense for a suicide, but Bruce did not fit the profile of someone who would commit such a horrific crime to gun down all these people and set fire. So a couple of the detectives paid Brad's house another visit. Now, I'm not sure why they wouldn't have just found out what kind of car Bruce drove by either asking Brad or looking up DMV records. But one of my main sources make it sound like they found his car keys at Brad's, or like asked Brad for his car keys. And they just literally walked down the street clicking the fob until the car lit up.
Yeah.
Hey, whatever. I don't know. Maybe that was faster somehow. But it turned out that his car was, in fact, a blue Dodge Caliber.
And this is Brad's car or Bruce's car?
Bruce's
car. Okay.
Yes. But it was parked near Brad's house because for some reason, he had driven there instead of going to his own house.
Okay.
Inside the vehicle, a detective said that they found a Santa suit, hundreds, if not thousands, of rounds of ammunition.
Oh my goodness.
And a flare hanging inside from the roof.
Bruh.
And when an officer went to pick up the Santa suit to pull it out,
oh, I'm scared.
There was a string attached to the flare, igniting it. The car was booby-trapped.
The booby trap?
The flame then caused an explosion from all the ammunition inside. Thankfully, no one got hurt.
Okay, good.
But
that could have been so bad.
Yeah, I thought the same thing.
Oh my gosh, he booby-trapped the car with the Santa suit. This is intense. Okay.
So luckily nobody got hurt, but the car was completely incinerated.
Along with all of the evidence that
destroying all of the evidence, except they were smart and they took photos throughout the process.
Good.
This left detectives with even more questions than they had before finding the car. They're like, wait a second. Fortunately, the autopsy report would clear some of it up.
Okay.
Bruce was found to have gunpowder on both himself and his clothing. Based on that evidence, as well as the angle at which he was shot, it was determined that he died from a self-inflicted gunshot. But the coroner also presented evidence that connected Bruce to the massacre of the Ortega family. He had third-degree burns on multiple places of his body, particularly his hands and arms. And there was red and white material that had melted onto parts of his clothing and body.
Oh, no.
Detectives did not believe it was his plan to kill himself because he never left a note.
Mm-hmm.
Their suspicions were confirmed when a man in Pasadena reported an unknown vehicle parked just outside of his home. It had been there for days, but no one in the neighborhood knew who it belonged to. So officers ran the plate number to find that it was a rental car that Bruce Pardo had falsified registration to put in his name. Inside the vehicle, investigators found a multitude of supplies, including a computer, maps of the US and Mexico, a plane ticket, as well as water and road trip snacks. Yes.
You probably explained this, and I somehow missed it. So Bruce Pardo is the same as Bruce Ortiz?
No, Ortiz was Sylvia's first husband. She had been married once before Bruce.
Okay. that didn't click in my head. You did say it, but I didn't process it. And I was very confused. And okay.
Yeah.
But you did say that and I didn't catch it.
Yes. Bruce was her second husband.
I see. And she was... Yes. I am sorry. I'm with you.
But that's why it took them digging into Bruce's divorce to connect him to that Sylvia, because
she still had her
she still had Ortiz as her last name.
And I can see how the police were confused, because I was too.
It took them a second. Yep. So it looks like his plan had been to flee, not to kill himself after this. But they weren't sure. Like, he had maps of, I get like conflicting reports on the plane ticket. One of my sources says that the plane ticket was for Illinois. Another one says the plane ticket was out of the country. I'm not really sure.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter in the long run. His plan was to flee.
Yeah.
Okay. And just when you think this can't get any more disturbing, detectives dug into why did Bruce park this getaway car where he did, in Pasadena, an entirely different city. And what they found was that Sylvia's divorce attorney lived just 500 feet from where the car was parked. Upon interviewing the attorney, they found out that Sylvia's reason for divorcing Bruce was far deeper than any of the family or friends knew. It turned out that he had not been so honest with Sylvia. After filing their taxes, she saw documentation showing that Bruce had claimed a dependent on his taxes for a child she knew nothing about.
Oh my goodness.
So, as any wife would, she confronted him, and he confessed that he and his previous girlfriend, Elena, had a son named Matthew. In 2001, Matthew was just 13 months old, and Elena left him with Bruce to go run some errands. When she returned, she found Bruce watching TV and Matthew nowhere to be seen or heard. They found him in the pool, and though he survived, Matthew suffered severe brain damage that caused paralysis, among other things, and his prognosis was that he would never fully recover. Being the nice guy that he was, Bruce didn't handle having a handicapped son so well, so he left and never contacted Elena again. He was required to pay child support, though, so he took the tax break of claiming his son as well. That was the final straw for Sylvia.
Yeah.
Not only had she been dealing with his change in personality from his medical crisis, but then she had to face the omission of a major detail about his life and the fact that he's frankly an asshat who left the mother of his child when things got hard, even though it was his fault in the first place. That's just my opinion, but
yeah.
This news spurred detectives to dig deeper into Bruce's career. Though Brad said that he had been so successful and trustworthy, even NASA worked with him, this news suggested that maybe he wasn't so trustworthy. And not surprisingly, they discovered that he had been fired shortly before his divorce to Sylvia because he had been fraudulently billing clients.
Lovely.
So, detectives speculate that losing his wife and then his job broke Bruce, and he began to plot to kill her, everyone she loved, and possibly the attorney that helped her. Detectives got a search warrant to his house in hopes of finding evidence of how he spent his days leading up to the murder. In the workshop behind the house...
Santa had a workshop?
He did have a workshop.
Wow. This is just sick.
It really is. In that workshop, they found evidence that corroborated what they would eventually find on his computer. He had spent weeks planning his crimes and had it all laid out there. lists of what he needed, how to make bombs, as well as a homemade sort of flamethrower, if you will. In his workshop, he still had many of the supplies he used, including ammunition, black powder, bomb-making materials, hoses, valves, and he had like a CO2 canister attached, like sitting on top of a motor or like a compressor. So, investigators were finally able to get the full picture of Bruce's actions. Before he went to the Ortegas, he packed up the rental car and parked it in Pasadena near Sylvia's attorney's residence. He then made his way back home, prepared for the Ortegas by wrapping the homemade flamethrower with the CO2 and the compressor and a canister of gasoline. Okay. He wrapped it like a gift. Then he put on his Santa disguise, knowing the likelihood that someone would let him in, thinking Papa Joe and Alice set up the Santa visit like they always had. And upon arriving, Bruce parked in one of their neighbors' driveways, walked right up to the Ortega's front door, wheeling the compressor. He rang the doorbell, and 8-year-old Katrina answered. There stood Santa. As any 8-year-old would, she invited him in, excited to see what he had in store. Before she could ask why he was wearing protective eyewear,
Goggles, Santa? Goggles?
Yep, he did the unimaginable. The evil SOB pulled out 2 handguns and shot her in the face.
Oh my.
Yes, that's why I said they believed that she would survive. And she did. She did survive.
Okay, good. But damn, son.
Yes.
In the face.
He then turned and shot her 2 uncles, James and Charles, who stood nearby. One of them yelled out that it was Bruce, according to Irma Ortega, one of their cousins who was visiting from Mexico. And she went on to say for an interview that they both, despite being wounded and shot, they both tried to get up and stop him, but they weren't able to.
I'm sure.
Papa Joe, Alice, and their 3 daughters ducked under the table, but Bruce obviously had far bigger plans than just shooting the first people he encountered. It's believed Sylvia, Papa Joe, and Alice were the prime targets because he made it a point to get them even when they were ducking under the table. And that gave Letitia an opportunity to get away, and she scooped her daughter up and ran out to the neighbors. Bruce continued shooting the other adults one by one, which gave the kids a chance to get away, all but Michael, who was stuck upstairs. Once Bruce was out of ammunition, he went back to the front door, grabbed the compressor, and began spraying the house and bodies with fuel. It's speculated that he had taken more flares with him, thinking that he would spray everything down and then light and throw the flares to start the fire on his way out. However, they think that what went wrong was that he neglected to think about it's a holiday. The likelihood is they will have candles or some sort of open flame going in the house as he sprayed the fuel. So they think that is how he got the burns on himself.
Right.
And why he ended up going to his brother's house in Sylmar instead of to Pasadena to the attorney's house. Detectives speculate that because his brother wasn't home to help him and the pain was undoubtedly unbearable, he took his own life.
I have to say, these police officers really put together
Yeah.
that they did a good job, like, piecing it, because look, he did it.
Yeah, they did it pretty quick, too,
Yeah.
from what I can tell. Fortunately, many of the intended victims survived that night, but most of them were children left without parents. I mean, the Ortegas had 5 children, and he killed all of them except for one, and even some of the in-laws. And then I think there was a few that were shot, but they made it out.
Mm-hmm.
And no doubt he left these children with a paralyzing fear of Santa.
Yeah.
But perhaps they did fare better than I can imagine, because in 2018, little Katrina, who survived being shot in the face, was almost 18 years old and advocating for gun reform alongside her classmates when they participated in a walkout 1 month after the Parkland, Florida school shootings.
I was a part of that walkout.
When interviewed about the walkout, she responded to questions about her personal experience with, quote, "I just knew I had to keep fighting, and I knew that I would live my life to the fullest for each one of my family members and everybody affected by gun violence." Go Katrina.
Go Katrina.
And in case you're wondering how she survived a shot to the face, it's because it happened to just run along her jawline.
Okay.
So she was left with a little scar. Well, it looked little in the video footage of her interview from the walkout, but it didn't go into her brain or anything like
that's
that.
Good. Yeah, my school did that walkout too.
So, Merry Christmas. Happy holidays. Santa is terrifying.
Well, I'm going to go look at Christmas lights now because we're recording this before the holidays. So that's really scary.
Yay, Santa.
Wow. And he had a workshop and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my goodness. Well, you did a great job telling that because that was complicated, but you did an amazing job.
Thanks. Yeah, there was a lot. I didn't know this. When I put it on the list of possible cases for Patreon members to pick, I did not know just how demented this case was.
This is tough.
I knew that it was going to be bad because it's called the Covina Christmas Massacre. So I expected it to be bad, but I had no idea.
Wow.
That it was going to go that deep.
Well, there's nothing else to say. Well, we will see you guys in the new year.
Well, we'll see you a little while after the new
February.
Year.
But it will still be in the new year.
Yeah, just a reminder. We will, if you're a person that skips our news, and you're still listening, we're taking a hiatus, but we will play our greatest hits for you. And thank you for listening, and thank you for being here. We appreciate you all.
And if you're a patron, we'll see you tomorrow for our live stream. Yes,
our live stream's tomorrow. Join us then. And if you have made it this far and we still will do a shout out on social media.
Yes.
I hate to say it, but you can leave us a Santa.
Yeah, we don't like it, but you can.
Maybe
or like a
family
or a card game because they were playing poker. If there's a card emoji, find us a better thing than Santa.
Yeah, we'll take anything.
At this point, we just want to be done because this case is sad.
And and like Savannah has said before, if you leave interesting comments or thoughts or whatever, she'll actually share a screenshot of the actual comment.
Yeah.
And tag you in that.
Merry Christmas, everyone. That's my Tiny Tim.
Thanks for listening.
We'll see you next time.
Till next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening, guys. Find us on Instagram and TikTok at Burden of Proof Pod and email us at burdenofproofpod@gmail.com.